Hi, everyone. Welcome to this really timely session. I am really excited to introduce Mary Churchill, who is an instructor up at UW Superior. My name is Mary Beth Leifholm. I'm at UW Eau Claire in the psychology department. And I think Mary's talk is really timely as far as online learning and the importance of creating a community of online learners. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary.
Here we go. Thank you so much, Mary Beth. And thank you everyone for coming today. I know that it's really been a challenging time for all of us in education, especially in higher ed, where, you know, sometimes the typical ways of teaching have come into, have found some challenges. And so the session that I'd like to talk to, that I'll be talking to you today about, is titled Developing and Sustaining a Community of Online Learners. As a professor in the teacher education program at the University of Wisconsin-Superior, we have both a fully online and a fully on-campus elementary education major. And so when the pandemic hit back in over a year ago now, we needed to move everything entirely online. And so we've really been using this as an opportunity to model for our students who are going to be future teachers, how they can take all the great things that they were doing in their on-campus classes and basically use them in an online environment as well. Now, many of the suggestions and tips that I'll be sharing today are those that are used in an asynchronous model. So where we have our courses set up in weekly modules and our students progress within those weekly modules. But some of them could also be utilized in a synchronous manner as well. And so one of the first things that I think is super important right away in a class, and so I'm going to try to model it here in this session, is that I'm going to ask you in the discussion forum just to indicate where you're from. Now, one of the reasons that I do this is that students find this to be really low risk. It's something that can be done using a poll if they are having a live class, or you can use discussion boards in a asynchronous class. You can also use surveys to find out what our students are, what's going on in our students' lives. So this is low risk. It's a great way to engage and set the tone of the course right away at the beginning. And as you're posting those things on the discussion board, I just want to let you know what you're going to leave this session with. I hope that you will leave with an understanding of the importance of a healthy online community, and also some practical strategies to create and nurture a community of online learners. Now, I've been to a lot of conferences, actually this particular academic year. It's actually been fun for me because, you know, as Mary Beth said, I'm up here in Superior. We're very far from everyone. If we want to go to Eau Claire even for a conference, you know, we're committed at least 2 days to doing that for the travel and away from our jobs up here. And so it's been nice to be able to go to virtual conferences like this. And I've gone to a couple where I've really hoped to find some practical information that I can put right into place in my classes. And some of them have been super. I've been able to do that. And in others, I've heard a lot about theory and very little practical suggestions. So I decided I'm going to try to leave the theory out of this and hope that you'll trust that I've done some research on the topic, or you can do the research on your own, of course, trust but verify. And then you could maybe come away with something that you could use right away in your classes. So the topics we're going to cover, I'm going to talk about, first of all, what community is, how I begin with design and structure, some everyday actions and suggestions for developing, sustaining that healthy online community, promoting peer interactions, going beyond the typical discussion board, and then some overarching tips. As we progress through, I might ask you to put things in the discussion forum, and those would be places that you can contribute, and you could also respond to your classmates. I was going to call you classmates. That's probably not the right thing. Your colleagues who are also attending. And if you have specific questions, please feel free to post them in the live Q&A. And Mary Beth is compiling those, and then at the end, we'll go through those questions and answer those, as well as any others that you might have at the end. So let's start first of all with what is community, because sometimes we all have differing opinions or versions of what a community really is. And so To make sure that we set the stage so that we're all on the same page, here's what I've come up with for what a community is. It's a group of people with common characteristics, tasks, challenges, goals, or purposes. So we can have a community in many different venues. A classroom community, we would all have the same learning goal, or the common goal is learning. And as an instructor, I want my students to feel valued and connected, because I know that if they feel valued and connected, that ultimately their learning will be enhanced and their academic achievement will go up. So when we're talking about community, I always come back to this is my purpose. This is what I want to accomplish. So why is community important? Well, when we have a solid online community, our students will feel secure, they will feel connected, and they'll feel connected to the content, they'll feel connected to their peers, they'll feel connected to their instructor, they'll feel supported, again, by both their peers and their instructor, they'll feel empowered and they'll feel valued, and then they will thrive in this community. Now, it's especially important when we don't often see each other in our community. So in an asynchronous environment, for example, we're all at our computers at different times and we don't see each other. So we have to find other ways to be together and be strong and feel secure and connected and supported. So here we're going to follow up with how we might do that. And before we do, I want you to think about something. And this is another example of what I might do in a class to get the students involved and to nurture that community. All right, think about a time when you were a student. It's the first day of class. And you might have to, for me, I'd have to think a long ways back, like a long time ago, okay? So I'm thinking back to when I was a student. It's the first day of class and you walk through the door into the classroom. What are the sights, sounds, and smells that make you feel comfortable? What makes you feel uncomfortable or on edge? And in the discussion forum, would you type in one or two of your thoughts? Now, if I was typing in the forum right now, and I'm not going to because quite honestly, then my cursor gets off and I can't advance my PowerPoint. I would put in there, I like the smell of a clean room. I like to see organized, I like to see posters on the walls and bookshelves organized, and I like baskets. I like in baskets and out baskets. I was a high school English teacher and the students I liked it when I knew where to put things. I liked routine. And so as you're thinking about what you appreciated in a classroom or what you didn't appreciate, those are some of the things then that you think about. How can I replicate that in an online environment? And I'm just looking at these. Makes me on edge, silence, yes. Enough lighting and energetic music, super. Seeing a friend, I think that that's really important, the connections. I don't know about you, but I've even as an instructor, I can't believe I actually look forward to some, not all my Zoom meetings, mind you, but some of my Zoom meetings I look forward to because I can see the people, my people that I work with and my students that I love to teach so much. So we think about those things, and then how can we put that into, how do that translate? Well, first of all, we want to begin with design and structure. So if we have, and in this, moving forward with now, I'm going to be talking primarily about if we have a class that we're going to put, and in UW, we're, University of Wisconsin system, we're using Canvas now, right? So how do we put together, how do we design and structure a course that will help develop and sustain that community of online learners? So structurally speaking, I would encourage the use of modules. And I would encourage that at a minimum, those modules be laid out at the beginning of a semester to the extent that you're able to do this. Now, I know that sometimes we want to adapt and we want to modify as we go along based upon student learning. We do some formative assessments. Oh, students aren't getting this. We need to make some changes. Yeah, not talking so much about that, but do we have modules? And I use modules for each week. So I have a 15-week course plus final exams. So I have 15 modules of learning. Each one of those modules consists of a week's. So while the students can work at their own pace within the module itself lasts 1 week. Now that helps to develop the routine, right? Because the students will know that for my weeks go from Tuesdays at noon through Mondays at 11:59 p.m. And so they know that on Tuesday mornings, they should be able to go in there and they are going to see a module of work. And the module will always start with a Start Here page. And on the Start Here page, it outlines what's the focus of this week's learning, what are the student learning objectives, and then links to any assignments or assessments for that particular week. It's followed by the next page, which provides all the reading and viewing materials for that particular week. And it might be that it's a direction to go to chapter 3 in our textbook, or it might be some blogs that I have found particularly timely for my class, and I provide them with links. It always includes a video of me welcoming them to the week. I use a program called Screencast-O-Matic. It's something that I'm very comfortable with. It works for me. As we're talking about tools that might be used, I find that it's the right tool for my job. And it might not be for you. You might find a different tool. But just an overview of me going through, they see my face, they hear my voice, and they can tell what I'm doing, what I'm bringing them through for that particular week. I find it interesting too, as kind of a side note, but having the voice and the picture of me available to my students resulted in a kind of a funny story. We used to bring our prospective student teachers onto campus prior to their student teaching, and I heard someone's voice in the hall, and they heard my voice, and they knew right away it was me, even though they had never met me in person, but they had heard my voice. I would include in my modules, going back to my structure now, so I have my modules, and then I'd also include a discussion board for as a cyber cafe, perhaps. And that is an opportunity for the students to just kind of do their own thing. I don't monitor, I don't answer questions. I will say I do monitor it to the extent that I check in every once in a while to make sure everything's on the up and up, but I don't usually have many problems with that. But I also then have a questions, comments, and concerns discussion board where if the students have a question or something about a particular unit of study, they can ask it there. And their students, their colleagues sometimes have the answers before I can get there to answer them themselves. I always encourage the use of Canvas inbox. Structurally, that is just best for me. Because I teach, but I also serve as a department chair at our university. Student emails can get buried in my email inbox. So I encourage them to use the Canvas inbox. That allows me to respond to them quickly, and so that their message does not get lost in the mix of all of my emails. I also like consistent navigation. Every week, the modules are going to be the same. No matter what course I teach, I can have one video that says course tour, and which I do actually have is a video that says course tour, and it will bring the students through all the different parts of my course. And if they take another class from me, the structure is going to be the same. And one way that we've dealt with this in our program is we've even come up with a Canvas template for our classes in our program. So all of us have a Start Here page. We all have a reading and viewing page. And then the remaining pages in each module might be discussion, or it might be assignment, or it might be peer review, whatever that might be. And be sure that you've defined your work week. For many of us in our program, we use the Tuesday through Monday. Many of our students are non-traditional. In fact, most of our students are non-traditional. They do a lot of their work on the weekends. And so by having that Monday available for last minute questions, we find that that has been helpful to them, and they appreciate that. All right, next up, as you're designing and teaching, consider interactions. Now I go back to a grad school class that I took, a grad school class that I took a long time ago, where the instructor said, there are really interactions in an online class can really come down to 3 different types. Now, this doesn't mean that the lines are sometimes blurred, but we have student-student interactions, student and structure interactions, and student content interactions. So I strive to hit those interactions in every course that I design and teach. Next, so those are the 3 interactions. Now I'm going to try to touch on those interactions, and some of them will blur. So I didn't say, oh, these are student, these are student content, because sometimes they blurred, but I think that as you look through these, you will be able to see that they hit one of those 3. All right, some everyday interactions. Learn and use your students' names. Now, I know that for when there's a huge class, maybe 200 students, it might be challenging to do that, but I really make it a priority to learn and use my students' names. And that might be from my come back from my K-12 background, where I spent 25 years teaching in the Duluth Public Schools. I was a high school English teacher, and it was really important for me to be able to address students by their names and to actually say their names correctly. And in an online environment, is that challenging? Yep, a little bit challenging, but I can still do that in comments that I make to the students on their assignments. I use their names, Frank, comma, and then I give the comment. Or in discussion boards, I always address them by their names so that the students know that I'm actually seeing them and hearing them. I like to use enthusiastic and energetic body language and words. You might see that already. I use my hands a lot. So in my weekly videos to the students, I used to think that those videos, in fact, all my videos, that they had to be perfect. I thought, I had to make sure every one of my words was correct. And sometimes I invent words. I don't even know I'm doing it. Like I'll say, I have to go out and sweep the grass when I really mean mow the grass. And, my family kind of gets used to that because as you can tell, I talk kind of quickly. But I thought that, oh no, I'm going to have to record this video over and over again. And I found out that some of my students, they were fine with that. And I got my feedback after I kind of gave up that it had to be perfect. And it was okay if I did this and used my hands and made up words and then corrected myself, or if I had a terribly bad hair day, which I've had a lot of this past year, that was okay. In fact, in some evaluations, the students say, I like that you're just you, you're authentic. I feel like you're part of our class. And I think that that's important. And it lets them know too that I'm not looking for perfection from them. I'm looking for the best that they can do. And then we move forward with our learning from them. And try to engage in casual conversations with students. I'll do that sometimes with assignments. When assignments are turned in, I encourage them to put a note or comment in the box when they're submitting it via Canvas. And in there, I might respond to them. Another way I do this is through one of the assignments that they have in one of my classes, well, actually more of my class, all of my classes, is each week I have a set of study guide questions. And I know that doesn't sound very technological, and it's really not, but it helps me to make sure that they've done their reading and their viewing for the week. And then the final question is, what questions you have for me about this topic? And every one of those questions I then answer in the comment section. It is time consuming, and I will say that once I hit the final one for the semester, I'm really kind of relieved. But I have gotten such great feedback because the students really feel like they're having conversations with me like they might at the end of a class session that's face-to-face. I'm also a big user of icebreakers, routine, and multiple modes of instructional strategies. So the first week in all of my classes is all about community development. We start off with, I start off with a welcome to class video. The students using the discussion board create their own videos, and it depends on the particular course that I'm teaching, but it might be a video that focuses on, okay, you're going to be doing your pre-student clinical experience in a 3rd grade classroom in about 10 weeks. I want you to make a video, a 2-minute video that introduces you to this group of 3rd graders. So it's actually content-based, but in a way, they are also learning about each other because their classmates view these videos, I view these videos, and we learn about each other and ask them different questions. In another class, and I'll show you the example in just a second, we make vanity license plates. So they actually have to create a vanity plate with symbols that represent them, and they post those to the discussion board, and then we view each other's vanity plates and respond to them. I have routine, just as I would in my K-12 classroom. I talked about my in baskets. I have in baskets. This is how you turn things in. This is when you're going to get them back. I have routine in my classes. The students know they don't have to fight the navigation. They don't have to try to figure out, well, what's it going to be like this week? The routine is always the same. The activities are absolutely different, but the routine is the same. They log in on Tuesdays. They can see what everything for that week is outlined for them. They know that their initial discussion board posts will be due on a Friday. Their follow-ups are due on a Monday. And when I say discussion board, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're just typing out a paragraph. There's other things that they do. They're going to be reading a certain amount out of their textbooks. They're going to be watching supplementary videos that either I create or I have found. They might be reading some blog articles or maybe some journal articles, and they will actually have an assignment or an assessment as well. And intermixed in there, there may be some peer review. That peer review is a great way for them to not only see each other's work and assist each other, but it's also a way to continue to build that community. Multiple modes of instructional strategies. Try not to rely just on a textbook. Textbooks are fine, and there's a place for textbooks, and we actually did a really, this is a tangent, but a little bit of a survey with some of our students, and they really liked actually having a textbook rather than open educational resources. I thought that was really interesting. I wasn't expecting that kind of a response, but in any case, whatever it is that you're having them read, supplement that with other things. Maybe it's not just a textbook. It might be journal articles or blogs or videos that you've created or you found on TED Talk or YouTube or, I think we have a service called Films on Demand that we also would use as well. So some of my suggestions as well for instructors, conscious word selection for messages and emails. It is, I think that we all know that nonverbals and verbals are really important, right? And I have found myself in particular being very careful about the messages that I send to my students during the pandemic. For one, I know that a lot of things are going on in their lives, so they're stressed. I would say that of all the students that I'm teaching this semester, there's only 5 that would be called traditional students. All the rest have families, and most of them have kids, and they're working full time, so they're under a lot of stress. So I'm very careful about what I say, because I could say something to you if you were in one of these boxes and I was like Mary Beth and I were earlier, we were talking to each other. She could see my face, right? And she could hear my words. And if I felt like I was misinterpreted, I could correct it right away. You don't have that opportunity with emails. I might send an email on Tuesday. The student might not get it till Thursday, is very upset, sends a response on the Friday. I don't get to it until a whole week has gone by. So instead, I'm very careful about the words that I use in my emails, in the announcements that I post, and even in the assignments that I post. Share your person side if you can, to the extent that you're comfortable. When we created vanity plates, I created my own vanity plate. And in my video, I have an introductory video that I submit with my students, just like they do, except that I tell them that I can take some liberties. I don't have to have my video for third graders. My video is actually for them. So they learn things about me. And I think then, again, that creates some bonding and enhances the environment. I provide weekly announcements. I've taken some online courses, and I have to remember that when I'm I've taken some online courses, and so this actually informs how I feel. That's where I was going with that statement. See, I sometimes go off on tangents. I apologize. So when I'm in a face-to-face classroom as a teacher, and maybe my students are having discussions or whatever's happening, I could literally not say a word that entire 50 minutes, but my students would know I was there. They would know that I was present. In an online class, especially an asynchronous online class, if I don't make a conscious effort to be present, the students won't know that I am. So using an announcement every week is just one more way for me to show that I am there, that I am involved. Timely and respectful responses to questions. I know that our students, they are, when they need an answer, they need it now. I try to set up parameters as to when I respond to my emails, as long as they know that. So they know, okay, Churchill responds to emails from this time to this time on these days. Then they're not worried. Did she get my email? Did she get my inbox? What's going on? Then they'll know that the response is forthcoming. Be sure to have clear expectations. Sometimes we, especially in a face-to-face where we see our students all the time, they come to understand what we expect and what we don't expect. In an online class, it's really important to set up your expectations right away. How do you expect them to address you? What is your preferred name? What are your preferred pronouns? What are your pronouns? When are you available? When will you be responding to their questions? And to provide multiple modes of feedback. So when I have assignments turned in, I have a rubric. So all of these assignments have rubrics, so I can go click, 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 but I also provide some written feedback. Sometimes I will provide feedback, a video feedback. No, that's time consuming. So it's just audio feedback, a little more time consuming than just typing up a response. But every once in a while, in, putting that out there really helps to, oh, wow, yeah, we're in a class. We're a team here. There's more than just me behind this computer. I have a classmates and I have a teacher, and I'm gonna move forward. So I knew these are really small. I apologize. So these are just some representations of what I do in my classes. So right here is a classroom tour. Up in the upper left-hand corner is a classroom tour. Again, I have one video that I can share with all of my classes because I have consistent navigation and consistent structure from class to class. I also have a video about what is online learning in this course, so that my students understand what my expectations are for online learning, because I think that online learning is very broad. The term itself is very broad. So what is it that I expect? And then here's an example of where an introduction to the class. At the very beginning, I have welcome to the class. Here's the course description. And then you'll see that all these videos, well, the exception of the course tour is a little longer, but my welcome video is only 2 minutes long. So it's not a great investment, and that I have time investment, but it is a good investment in the class. And then here's an example of my vanity plate. I live in Minnesota, but here, I work in Wisconsin, and I also have, a camper, and I camp in Wisconsin. So they're hugging each other because we love each other. We don't get into, discussions about the Vikings and the Packers. We just are a happy relationship. Camper girl, I love to camp, my fishing. I'm kind of a nerd. And then, I, of course, probably wouldn't include the summer shandy if I was teaching third graders. But, we're teaching college, so they kind of understand, who I am. And I feel comfortable sharing this with them. And this brings about conversations. Oh, have you ever tried this? If you've ever visited the Leinenkugel Brewery, oh, yes, I have. And we could kind of talk, and they know that I'm more than just, I'm a person behind a screen. Ooh, promoting peer-to-peer interaction. I would encourage the use of the group feature. So usually in our teacher ed courses, we have about 20 students in a class. I'll divide them up into 2, especially with discussion boards. So then they are responsible for making sure that they read or view or whatever, everything that's on a board. Or if we're doing peer reviews, they get some interaction with each other. I do offer live meetings in my classes, even though that we are asynchronous. I put out an option of, hey, I'm going to have a live class. I call it a class, even though it's not really a class. And I offer a few times, and this will be the topic that we're going to discuss. And they come prepared. I give them some materials if they want to come prepared. Have gotten great feedback on actually being able to be live with each other. I encourage my students to set up a profile page in Canvas with their picture so that their classmates can see what they look like. And looking at some meaningful discussion boards, and that's going to require a slide for itself later, that goes beyond the model that I actually learned on, which was, okay, post an initial response, and then, you respond to 2 of your classmates, trying to take it a bit beyond that. And here's some of the things that I've done to take the discussion board a step further. I have had students provide videos, maybe their personal responses to the reading. There's a set of questions. TED Talks. My students had to take an instructional strategy, and they actually had to produce their own 2-minute TED Talk. And the strategies were divided up. So within the group, everyone in the group got to see a TED Talk on each of the strategies we're covering. Or maybe it's an elaboration on a product that they have created for the course itself. They might find a blog article, or they might want to write one of their own. They might take a poll similar to what we just had done in the discussion forum, where either I create the poll or they create the poll, and then their classmates respond to it. A field trip. Now, this would be probably pre-pandemic. I thought this was a great idea that I learned from someone at a conference, was that you actually, the students go on a field trip, or they have a conversation, or they interview someone, and then they report their findings back in the discussion board. So twice this semester, for the conversation summary, I've had my elementary education majors interview teachers. One was about their technology use during the pandemic. The other was to find out the difference between classroom discipline and classroom management. And I always have a backup stash of instructors who are still my friends and colleagues from K-12 who are willing to step in if they need to assist with those. and then my students provide the responses and some summary on the discussion board. They might have to create their own tweet on a topic. They might have to find a cartoon or draw an image, a 3, 2, 1, 3 things they learned, 2 things I can't remember, and one question that they might still have, or the fishbowl, where if we're still in groups, this group is actually having the conversation or the discussion while this other group is watching. And then the group that's watching has to summarize the conversation or discussion. And then later in the semester, we switch the roles. So some overarching tips. I would first of all really encourage people to use intentional course design and navigation. I think that we've done some excellent work at UW Superior with our online program. We have an incredible instructional design staff and professional development. All of us, my understanding is 99%, and I might be wrong on that percentage, of the instructors at UWS went through some intentional professional development last summer, where we each had to fully design an online course using best practices and research-based strategies for our students. And so I would say that that's probably my overarching tip, is make sure that you understand how to successfully develop a course. I would say, please don't try to replicate face-to-face. And when I say that, I say, but there are things about face-to-face that are really great. And those would be especially developing a community, right? So we want to develop a community in an online, but we aren't going to necessarily be able to do it the same way that we did it in a face-to-face environment. I would also say that we work very hard to ensure that our on-campus and our online courses have the same student learning objectives, and we have the same key assessments. How we get to those, though, is what differs in our online environment. Try to utilize multiple modes of communication and feedback. If email's not working, maybe it's a Zoom session, maybe it's a team session, maybe it's whatever it might be. But try to reach out to the students as much as you can. One thing that I've done with our 15-week classes or our 16-week classes is halfway through, I actually have a canned email that says, okay, we're halfway through the semester. I've noticed in your grade, and I'll put some kind of, I have some canned boilerplate language, and then I copy and paste that into 40 emails and then say, hi, Sarah. Hi, Frank. Hi, Thora, whatever it might be. So it looks like I'm individualizing those, and I send those out as emails, and I do get good responses on that. And the other overarching tip is be present. Online classes, I think, sometimes get the rap of being, oh, the students are doing all the work and the instructor isn't. I actually think the instructor does more work in an online class than perhaps in a face-to-face class, or at least as much. I don't want to say that you don't do a lot of work in a face-to-face class. But we have to be present, and we have to be intentional about being present, because we're not going into a classroom 3 times a week or 2 times a week and meeting face-to-face with our students. Instead, we have to find other ways to do that. And with that, I have an exit ticket for you. So in the discussion forum, what is one thing that you think that you could immediately or almost immediately apply in your own online course? And then again, in the questions, the live Q&A, what questions do you have, if you haven't already put some in there, that I might be able to answer? And I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that, because I know that Mary Beth will be looking at those questions for me as well.
Yes, everyone, just to reiterate, please enter any questions you have, and I will help moderate those and make sure that Mary is seeing and or hearing them so she can address them.
Great, so we have, John likes the field trip idea. Oh, I was thinking about that already. Great. Improving discussion boards. Scheduled classes even for asynchronous. I think that you will love that. Now, you can sweeten the pot a little for your students with this. One thing that my students do reflections, we do a lot of reflecting in teacher education, obviously. And so one of the assignments that I have is a paper, kind of a paper. And what I tell the students is, and I did this semester, was you can write the paper or you can come and discuss reflection at a live meeting. And I offered 2 live sessions. And I had, of my 40 students, I had 27 students who attended between the 2 sessions. I think I was like, yay, look at all those 27 less papers to grade. But they had never seen each other, and the talking that they did and the collaborating, and I was bouncing from break room to break room. I got done with the day and my husband just said to me, well, I can tell you weren't in any meetings today, that you were actually working with students because you're so happy. And I just really was. Yeah, Brian, better engagement with classes. It's hard, you know, and I think that one thing that I've done, I don't know if this will help anyone, is that, you know, if we have a face-to-face class, our calendars are booked out, right? Okay, so nobody tries to schedule us for meetings from 11 to 11:50 because we're in class. I say to myself, when do I want to be part of my online classes? And I book that out on my calendar. So nobody bugs me, and my students know that I'm engaged in their class at those particular times. Oh, the vanity plate. Yep, that was fun. That was really fun. I got a lot of questions from my students. So they were, why in the world would Wisconsin and Minnesota be hugging each other? Well, I had to answer that one quite a bit. Yep, intentional presence. How do you recommend balancing on-off camera encouragement? Okay, so this is what I do. If I'm making a video that's just for this particular semester, like especially my weekly videos, I make those every week. Sometimes I cheat, I go ahead. Like last week I made 3 videos and I changed my sweater 3 different times so that the students wouldn't know. You can do tricky things like that. But I make sure that my presence is there. If I'm doing content that I want to reuse from semester to semester, or that maybe one of my colleagues might want to use, for example, we have an adjunct teaching the 3rd section of this same course, and I provide the videos to her. Then I keep myself out of, I do my own recording with my mouth, but I don't have my face on those. I hope that answers that question.
Mary, I see a question in the live Q&A. Is there any research on the advantages or disadvantages to modules set up by topic or by week?
I think the research that I've read and what I've studied in instructional design, because that was my background in my PhD program, was the use of modules, either by week or by unit or a unit of study, as long as you're consistent in that approach. I lean towards the weekly ones just because it's easier, I think, for students to understand 1 week, 2 week, 3. When I did try it once by content, and I found it was confusing to them because some of the content was 2 weeks and some might be 3 weeks and some only 1 week. And so that routine and consistency was more challenging. Sometimes I will still use the week by week. Like this time I have a couple of weeks where the content actually goes over more than 1 week, but I will still post it by week, if that makes sense. So I will say, okay, weeks 10, 11, and 12 are all covering our pre-student teaching clinical experience. That's the focus of these 3 weeks, but my modules are still 3 distinct weeks.
Here's another good question. I work very hard to incorporate much of what you showed or much of what you shared, breaking up lecture with polls, questions, whiteboard creating, but struggle with non-responders. Seems like I beg for anyone to unmute mic or even post in chat. I teach developmental ed reading at a community college.
Yeah, and I wish I had a magic wand to help you with that one. I think that we've all become a bit Zoomified. We aren't participating as much as we did before, and some students never did participate. I don't have an answer for that. I'm just going to be honest about that. I think that because my live sessions are so infrequent, I'm lucky. I am very lucky. I'm fortunate that my students are on camera and they do participate. For those instructors who have to meet every week, I know that it has been challenging.
You know, I also think sometimes it's hard to address those non-responders because what's most important is to know the reason why, right? Is it simply because they're not there? You know, they're one of the few students who might have just turned on the screen and they went to do something else. They're trying to multitask, or is it because they're not prepared? So I struggle with those non-responders too,
Right.
but I think what makes that a really difficult struggle is because the reason would be more important than anything as far as addressing that.
Right. Right. You know, very similar to, you know, like when we were in K-12 or when I was in K-12, you know, if you had students who were acting out in class, why? Why is the reason behind that? Because there's always that reason behind the actions.
Yeah. I'm looking in this, let me see here. Not seeing any more questions in live Q&A, but I'm looking in the discussion to make sure we've addressed them. Do you have the ability to do polling via cameras being on or off? That one is fun. Maybe that wasn't a question from John.
I know I've actually, okay, in Zoom, I know this is kind of, it's not like teaching a class, but I've even found that running department meetings by Zoom has had its own challenges, you know, because I have colleagues are trying to multitask and do things and we're not all in the same room. So I have done polls. I've done polls in my department meetings. When they're all on camera, I asked them, one time it was, you know, what's your favorite decade of music, you know, and I went all the way back to the 40s up, and then we had, you know, there was kind of this time to chat and icebreakers before the meeting actually started. So I know that you can do polls if they're on or off in Zoom.
I think this is an interesting comment. I find I spend so much time developing content and thinking about instruction that I have little time to engage. That resonates with me because I feel like this last year, as someone who didn't teach a whole lot of online classes, I felt like I was back in my beginning days of teaching. I felt like I was back in where so much time is being spent in course prep that you really don't have much physical and or mental energy for anything else. So that resonates with me, Brian.
You know, yeah. And I think that, you know, like I was fortunate because I'd been teaching it online. So switching, you know, when we did the pivot to all online, I was in a pretty good position, but I saw a lot of my colleagues who were like, they're great teachers. They just they didn't understand the amount of time that actually had to go into making the online class. I don't mean that as a criticism. They just didn't have the experience, and they do. And if nothing else, I think that some of the online instructors and their courses have gotten a little bit more respect for the amount of time and energy that has to go into them, because you are exhausted and you feel like you're never off. You know, I check my email, my inbox, and my discussion boards every day to see if there's anything there that my students need. Now that's my choice. I don't think you have to do it every day, but that takes a lot of energy and time that wouldn't necessarily be taking place if we were right there and could address things immediately with each other.
I appreciated the humble reminder over the last year, just of how much work teaching really does entail, particularly the prep work, right? I think sometimes, as I now am in my 20th year of teaching, I've almost lost sight of just those beginning days and the grueling efforts putting into that prep work. So I find myself more able to connect with and relate to my new colleagues, kind of better remembering what they're going through.
It's also been great for us in teacher ed that our student teachers have been in, wow, so many different instructional models, depending on where they are, if they're in Minnesota or well, heck, even if they're in Minnesota, it could be just totally online or hybrid. And they have all risen to the challenge. And so I'm trying to take the silver lining out of some of this, that they're going to be really well prepared for whatever comes their way in the future. You know, I think we've only got about 40 seconds left. So I just want to thank everybody again for coming. I really appreciate the time that you took today to be here. And thanks, Mary Beth, for your help. And Kelly,
Our
behind
event
the
planner.
scenes.
Thank you, Mary. And I really think, again, this is a really timely topic. And I think you did an awesome job really just conveying one that although we can't replicate face-to-face, we could definitely create these meaningful learning experiences for our students online, but also the important role of making yourself personable and also the organization. I think you highlighted those nicely. So thanks everyone for joining us. And again, thank you, Mary. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.